Should you be concerned that Apple is peeking at your photos?
And are Samsung's latest foldables really Galaxy Note killers? Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.
Hi there. Welcome back to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, where each week we sneak across the state borders to catch up with Australia's leading tech journalists and dive into the big tech stories of the week. I'm, as always, Alex Kidman, and I'm joined virtually, as always, by Adam Turner. And Adam, with the sad news that the PAX Oz Gaming Expo has had to be cancelled again this year, it looks as though I'll have to keep the Vertical Hold Retro Gaming Trophy for yet another year. Now, when we can finally meet in the epic crucible of retro gaming face to face, what game do you reckon you're going to take me down with?
I have to play to my strengths here, and and to your weaknesses. And I've been watching a lot of the Olympics, so I reckon Summer Games on the Commodore 64. I'll take you.
Oh, a bit of epics action. So there's lots of those, and I might have to counter with Decathlete on the Sega Saturn, and an even better take on an Olympics game, albeit without a license. We're also welcoming back into the Vertical Hold virtual studios the one and only Jen Dudley-Nicholson from News Corp. Jen, you're a legit hard quiz champ. What game should Adam be looking at in your opinion?
Tetris? I don't know. I just play Tetris till I puke. I figure that's what everybody does, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a fill in a Saturday.
Keep it old school. I mean, everybody wins. You know, you play too much Tetris, you work out how everything's going to fit into your house afterwards. It works out.
Solid choice.
Yeah, that's an excellent choice, and I think Adam, that might settle it. It's an extra big week in the world of tech news, and Jen's with us to talk through Samsung's Galaxy Unpacked event. So many devices. So many of them that we sort of knew bits and pieces about before the event, but there's still a lot of actual intriguing content to chat about. We're also going to be looking into Apple's moves into on-device photo scanning in the name of child safety with the one and only Stilgherrian a little later. But first, because it's just that busy a news week, we caught up with Steve Molk from TV Blackbox to talk Paramount Plus.
So, Mr. Molk, Paramount Plus, as if I didn't have enough things to remember and subscribe to. What's the story here?
It's the streaming service nobody asked for and nobody wanted. Look, this replaces...
That was Presto, wasn't it?
I was going to say, haven't we already been there and done that? That position is taken.
Oh, Vale Presto, how you tried so hard. This replaces 10 All Access because it is 10 Viacom CBS, who have The Bachelor and stuff here in Australia. They're owned by Viacom CBS in the States, who also owned by Paramount. So they, in March, launched Paramount Plus as a streaming service, replacing CBS All Access. This is very long-winded for a very boring story. And they have joined the fray, shall we say. Now, to their great credit, because they own Paramount and they're a television company in CBS and Viacom, a whole library, like just a raft of content is already there, which is, to be fair, way ahead of where, say, Apple TV Plus was when it launched.
And how much do they want for it?
$8.99 of your Australian cents per month.
Mm-hmm.
So
is that it?
Is that a deliberate tactic? Because let's face it, 10 All Access didn't exactly set the world on fire. I mean, it had a library of content, shall we say. I'm struggling to think of too much that absolutely set my world on fire in terms of what they had. But is that pricing a very deliberate, hey, pay attention to us because we're a bit cheaper than Stan and a bit cheaper again than Netflix?
Look, I would offer it's definitely an initial marketing ploy, a subscription ploy, because they haven't given us the staged kind of SD, HD, 4K kind of subscription levels that other services have. There is just one price and you get what you get. I think the benefit to Paramount Plus over 10 All Access is, as I inferred, the library size. Like 10 All Access really struggled because it was a bunch of Australian content and a little bit of other stuff and not much else. It was a bit light on. And that in part was the CBS All Access problem, in that even though 10 All Access existed, they still sold the rights to some of their good stuff to other streamers who played it in Australia, thinking Lower Decks
Yeah, it went
on
to
Amazon,
Amazon.
for example.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this as glass half empty though, because when you say they have a big library of stuff, the first thing I
Mm.
think is great. So all that stuff has disappeared from all the other libraries. Is that what's happened?
It, parts of it, absolutely, and particularly the showcase content. So, showcase the cable channel in America is a part of this suite of stuff that Viacom CBS own. So, think Californication, think Your Honor, the Bryan Cranston series that was on Stan here for a heartbeat earlier this year. It's on Paramount Plus. And going forward, a whole bunch more of the new showcase stuff will go straight into Paramount Plus for us. However, there are still things that have existing deals that sidestep it. So
Is
won't land on Paramount Plus in Australia that are on Paramount Plus in the US.
is Stan the one that's going to feel the pain the most in terms of losing content in Australia?
Well, they had the showcase deal early on, so they're the ones that are certainly struggling in losing that content quicker.
Hmm.
I don't think they're going to get first run at it anymore like they used to. So all of the first run showcase content, I would expect, will still end on Paramount Plus. It will depend, honestly, um, not even a showcase decision, but if another production house have made it and they do a deal outside the Americas, etc., etc. I can't speak to what that looks like, but there is still capacity for stuff to fly outside the direct channel of Paramount Plus into Australia. But look, Stan and Foxtel are probably the biggest losers in that context because they're the ones that have had some of those deals to get that content where we've seen it previously.
What about the movie library? Because I'm pretty sure, like I saw Indiana Jones was on the list.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure Raiders is on Netflix. I'm sure I've watched it on Netflix. So are all those movies going to get pulled back as well?
They will eventually. So where there are some of those, big blockbuster films that you would watch, the Mission Impossible
Yeah.
franchise, Harry Potter, which seems to be everywhere at the moment. Turn on a series and a streamer, and it's on it. Um, they will all find a home. I mean, they're on Paramount Plus now, but they will absolutely end up only being on Paramount Plus because, frankly, they've been sold off for a 12-month run on another streamer, and then when those rights expire, hey presto. Sorry, hey Paramount.
Rest in peace.
So you mentioned, Steve, that you kind of there's no tiers. You get what you get.
Mm.
Does that mean if I'm sitting on a really good, in air quotes, NBN connection, a really nice fast connection,
Relatively speaking.
that I'm going to be looking at it in glorious 4K with full, Dolby Vision or Dolby Atmos surround sound, or is everything in crunchy old SDO Vision?
There have been no mention of the of the number 4 or the letter K when it comes to Paramount Plus in Australia. Which, look, there's a few missteps, honestly, around the way Paramount Plus has come to us. And I acknowledge straight away. It launched in March in the US. It's what is it, August now? You'd kind of figure, but it's 2021. You'd kind of figure they'd have this stuff lined out. There's no profiles, so you don't get to have Molk, wife, child as alternate users, so that I don't get them messing up my stream. There's no Chromecast capability, though there is a Google TV app and a Sony Bravia Android TV app as well. So I mean, you get that covered a bit, but those things are missing. And the fact that there's this, what are we getting in an SD, HD, or 4K? I mean, obviously, stuff that was filmed only in SD, it would be
Hmm.
pointless even trying to give it to you in HD. It's just not a thing. We saw that with The Simpsons on Disney Plus, right? Um, I think the challenge moving forward, and this will probably be the first big advancement that they make when they change the pricing, will be that you'll get a 4K step out of Paramount Plus, but it'll cost you money for it.
But are they doing their own originals? Because if they're doing their own originals, I would assume they would be shot in 4K.
Oh, have a look at one of the big shiny new pieces that they're showing off as a part of the launch of Paramount Plus in Australia is the new Mark Wahlberg film Infinite, which was meant to be a cinema release. So you would expect it was absolutely shot in 4K. The spoilers: the film is not great. Doesn't matter how many pixels you throw at that, it is not getting any better. Um, and there's a whole bunch of Australian content being made as well. But 5 bedrooms in 4K is pointless. Maybe we'll get to the stage where they'll recognise that there's worth in the expense And particularly, I think it'll be pushed out of the Hollywood side of things. The films and the TV shows that warrant, let's see it in the crisp, slick 4K stuff. Even just give it to me in HD, frankly. I'll be keen to see, what that stuff starts to continue to roll out as we get more of it. And there's a whole bunch of Australian content coming into it too.
So, in terms of Australian content, do they have any play in the other area we're seeing big competition in, namely sport? Are they doing anything sports wise,
Oh,
sports rights or similar? I would not know, of course. It's not
mm,
my thing,
no, no.
but that would seem to be a differentiator for them if they can.
I'll try and use small syllable words for you, Alex.
Excellent.
The A League, so the round ball football game
Proper
domestically in
football.
Australia, proper football, depending on how you follow it, will be absolutely on Paramount Plus. And in fact, if you are a member of an A League club in Australia, you will have been sent a discount to sign up, or a voucher, so that when you sign up, you got I think it was a couple of months or 2 months, 3 months free for signing up in that process. They are absolutely working their butts off to get a whole bunch of other sporting content through there and connected to 10 as well, because there's that straight away 10 Viacom CBS Paramount Plus connection. It is being run as a subsidiary of the American version. So what happens in Australia, they are looking to tie in to Paramount Plus with their streaming rights. Although there's been, even just in the last 24 hours, some kerfuffle happen with Foxtel picking up the full rights to MotoGP, and that's going to cause some problems because the Phillip Island race is on the anti-siphoning list, so they have to find a broadcaster. Now, that has been 10 in the past. Will it be 10 in the future? We don't know. Will it be Paramount Plus? Possibly, but will that meet the anti-siphoning list rules? Probably not.
Coming soon
Uh,
to community TV near you.
Channel
yeah,
31's
that's
rubbing
right.
their hands together at this point. They've got a new streaming service and now they know what to do with it.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of precisely it. I mean, it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what does play out there. I mean, when we look at the fact that there's Stan Sport, there's KO, Amazon are starting to dabble in sports rights in Australia, and now Paramount Plus. If you thought that your broadcast viewing was fragmented, if you're a sports fan, goodness gracious me.
Where did they poach A League from? Where could you watch it before now?
Most recently, it was on SBS. Pardon for the laugh in my voice, because that meant that nobody watched it. Um, and as
Even
a
though it was
Central
free.
Coast, as a recent Central Coast Mariners fan, and by fan I mean I've been to a single game and we lost. It probably fair that no one watched it. Look, it was on 10 for a bit. It's kind of bounced around the A League, but I think most recently it was on SBS, and I think Foxtel had some of it as well. But now it's wholly solely on Paramount Plus.
Because Optus Sport was doing its best to try and snap up as much of the
Mm.
ramble as it can. So I would have thought that they would have been keen to get the A League. You'd be annoyed if you had to get Optus Sport for English Premier League and then pay for this for A League.
If indeed you cared, correct.
Yes.
The deal you mentioned for A League fans or club members or what have you,
Yes.
a couple of months free. That's kind of surprising in contrast, because they're only doing, and this genuinely surprised me, they're only doing a 7-day free trial.
Yeah.
That's really short for something you want to sell to people.
But that's almost the industry standard now, right? It's a bit tough for us, but Netflix now only has a 7-day free trial. Stan only has a 7-day free trial.
But they've been
Um,
around for years.
sure, they have been around for years, but if you're a new person wanting to dive into Netflix, you only get 7 days if you can't find someone else's login to use to check it out.
If you're
But I
running
know
a
what
brother in
Netflix
law's.
is. I mean, I've
Yeah,
I've
yeah, yeah.
I've been using Adam's brother-in-law principle, or I've heard of it
Sure.
before somewhere. This Paramount Plus thing is new. I think the 7-day thing is a bit of a is going to be a bit of a pain point for them.
It will, but let's be frank, Paramount Plus has poured their marketing dollar into advertising on 10. If you've watched any part of the 10 network over the past, let's say, month, you'll have seen the Paramount Plus bug in the top left corner and an extensive advertisement series, including, normally they would give you 30 seconds or maybe a 60 seconds on the next thing on 10. We're seeing 2.5 minutes for programs getting advertised that are on Paramount Plus. Why Women Kill, Five Bedrooms, as I mentioned, season 2 is a Paramount Plus exclusive. Infinite, the Mark Wahlberg film. They've gone really hard in plugging away there. Now, in part, that's because in lockdown, putting stuff on bus shelters and in train tunnels doesn't work.
No one's going to
So
see it for
Yeah.
sure.
what do you got to do? I mean, I agree with you. I think that timing wise, a longer than 7-day trial period for Paramount Plus, certainly in the first instance, would be much smarter. But look, I don't want to be, unfair to the people that are running Paramount Plus. They haven't made some good decisions in the past.
I think I might be speaking for Alex here as well when I say Star Trek is my football. In
Yep.
that there's a lot of different flavors of it, and I want to watch them all. And they're fragmented and spread across all these different services. Discovery's on Netflix, Picard is on Amazon, and now
Amazon.
the new one, Strange New Worlds, which goes back to Captain Pike. So it's kind of a prequel around about Discovery, is going to be on Paramount Plus.
Yes.
Now, Picard is the thing that finally got me to cave in and give my money to Amazon to watch their streaming service. And I was thinking, okay, Strange New Worlds will probably be what gets me to cave in and give this lot my money. Until you said that it probably won't be in 4K. Now, that is, to use a technical term, bullshit.
Yeah.
I will watch it on the BitTorrent channel before I will give them money to not watch it in 4K. I can understand maybe about Dolby Vision and stuff like that and Dolby Atmos, but when they've got it in 4K, but they just can't be asked showing it to me in 4K because I'm in Australia and they can't be bothered charging me a bit extra, well, then I don't feel the need to give them my money.
Oh, look, I can't speak for your justification of why you would do that. However, if I can defend the streamer for but a moment, storing those extra large 4K files costs an extra lot of money, and they're not charging you extra money for it, Adam. So why should they give it to you in 4K?
But they'll be giving it to Americans in 4K.
Yeah, but they've already got the infrastructure and they're already charging them money for it.
Then charge me extra money. That's what I'm saying. I would give them the extra couple of bucks to watch it in 4K.
Oh, no, look, this for mine falls absolutely into the things that in 2021 we expect of our streaming services, right? Profiles, the ability to, if we have to pay for it, give it to us in 4K, because Disney Plus doesn't charge me any extra, nor does Amazon to give it to me in 4K. Like I just pay my money and they give it to me. And all like it's just this grow and the UI, man, the functionality of Paramount Plus should be a lot better than it actually is, given that it is at least 6 months old, even though it's brand new to us. Like this just click this and stuff doesn't load properly, or you load up a screen and it doesn't have all of the images for the episodes, or stuff's back to front. It's just been a bit of a shambles.
I mean, the Paramount, it's not like they're small time.
10 All Access, I think it was called.
Yeah.
But this is Paramount. They're big time. They should be able to do better than this.
That's it. Australia haven't built a new app, right? They've just copy-pasted, changed a couple of lines of code, and welcome to
added
Paramount
a few
Plus
U's
Australia.
into the UI to make the spelling correct, right?
That's it, right? Totally done. So it's a disappointment. I mean, it's great that they've launched. It's great that it works. But it's disappointing that in August, nearly 2022, right? We're nearly at 2022. And this is what a new streamer to the market thinks is acceptable when all of their competition says, no, we're doing better than that.
We'll have to see how Paramount Plus compares after a couple of months, and we might have you back on the show to chat then. But thanks so much for your time today, Steve.
It's my pleasure.
Next up, I caught up with Stilgherrian to discuss Apple's moves in terms of privacy, child safety, and what that might mean for the future of encryption on your iPhone. So Apple as a company is one that has traded pretty strongly on privacy, especially compared to much of the rest of its competitors in the industry. But in the last week, it's drawn the ire of a lot of privacy professionals. I'm joined by the one and only Stilgherrian to discuss what Apple's doing and how. But I suppose I should flag before we start. Well, first of all, I should say hi, Stilgherrian.
Hi, Alex.
But I should flag before we start that this discussion has to do with child sexual abuse material, which could be confrontational for some people, but also creates something out of an elephant in the room. It's a very difficult topic to discuss without being accused of being trying to protect or excuse people who trade in that kind of material. It's indefensible. There isn't a defense for it.
Yeah, and quite clearly so. But unfortunately, as you point out, whenever you start discussing this, you're saying, no, we agree that you should do something about child sexual abuse material in your realm, but then it turns into this is something, therefore we must do this. I was like, well, you know, let's not burn the baby with the bathwater. That is a terrible metaphor, but I
It's
mean,
an appalling metaphor.
but it's kind of the thing. It's like, yeah. We need to do stuff in the same way that, sure, you could prevent domestic violence by having an armed guard at everyone's kitchen door and just shoot anyone who looked at their wife badly. I mean, it'd work, but it's not something that we recommend.
Indeed, and what I really wanted to dive into was more the kind of the technical side, the technology side of what Apple's doing, because it's taking a similar approach to existing approaches from the likes of Microsoft, Google, Facebook, but doing it in a slightly different way. What's Apple actually doing?
Or should we? We should really go through. I mean, we should really go through all three things that Apple's doing.
Hmm.
One is completely non-controversial, which is if someone, well, mostly non-controversial, if someone uses search or Siri to search for child sexual abuse material or related terms, a little pop-up will tell them, hey, this is probably not a good thing. Here are some resources if you need help
Hmm.
in dealing with the thoughts you're having. Okay, you can argue about whether Apple should be inserting itself in your life in this way, but it's not going to do any harm,
Hmm.
probably. Number two, slightly more controversial, parents can put a parental control on their kids' devices. So if they receive via iMessage a sexually explicit photograph, brackets as determined by some as yet to be disclosed artificial intelligence process, then the parents are notified of this. Or rather, the kid gets told, hey, here's a blurred photograph.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Are you sure you want to watch this? By the way, if you do, we'll tell your parents.
Hmm.
Now, there are problems with that. There's various false positives. We've seen things problematic in the past where a high school art class can't see their Renaissance paintings because of boobs,
Hmm.
and so on. And we do have issues then regarding transgender kids who want to kind of discuss their body image with their peers and so on and so forth. Not all naked flesh is
Sexual
a bad
flesh.
thing.
Yeah.
Sexual flesh, exactly. And there's another whole argument about what, should we be sexualizing all these things? Okay, but that's the thing. The third one, and this is the one that people are concerned about, is the scanning of your photos to see if any of them are child sexual abuse material. Now, there's a lot of caveats on this. First of all, what counts is a set of photographs that are held by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the United States. That's a nonprofit. They work with law enforcement and they make available to people like Apple and others a set of hashes of the images, not the images themselves. They're not trading in this material, but they do have a technology. Microsoft's photo DNA is used by a lot of people. That is, if you like, it's a hash of a series of measurements of the images, so that you can tell it's not just a hash of the file, because all you need to do is resave the file at another size and the hash changes. It's kind of like uh, Face ID, but it's image ID more broadly. It creates a fingerprint of this image. So Microsoft's Photo DNA does this. Microsoft has been using it for years. Their technology is also used by Google and Gmail and Reddit and a whole bunch of others, so that if any images are stored on their servers and they trigger a match, law enforcement is then notified, and there's a process to make sure it's not a false positive. A proper law enforcement human then comes into the loop and looks at it to confirm that this is the bad thing.
Well, I think from what Apple said, actually, it's multiple flags. It's not just a single instance. And I believe their technical
Yeah.
data suggests actually in the first instance, Apple will review it before handing it over to law enforcement.
And that fits with Apple's kind of, we'll protect your privacy. We're not just going to immediately hand you to the cops. Except we still don't know how many hits they have to get. It is perfectly reasonable to say, hey, look, one ping. I mean, maybe you accidentally downloaded the photo. Maybe it is a false positive, and so on and so forth. Maybe someone is trying to entrap you by sending you these images, which is like another whole thing. Okay, so far so good. And this, as you say, it's nothing new. Microsoft has been doing this on their servers for Hotmail, remember that, and others for years, a decade or more. What's different is Apple says we will be scanning anything you put into iCloud Photos, except the scanning is done on your device. So you'll have software not running up in Apple's cloud. The software will be running on your iPhone, on your Mac, calculating the hashes and so on, and then telling Apple if there are any matches. But Apple says, yeah, but we're only scanning the photos that are in the cloud. So there's this whole bit of a kind of what is and isn't the cloud. And people concerned about privacy are then saying, what you are doing is you are running a scanner on people's devices to see if you can find bad things. In the case of child sexual abuse material, sure, as we started by saying, it's very hard to argue against that as a bad thing because the abuse material is the bad thing. But then you hit the question of, okay, you're doing this in the United States to assist US law enforcement enforcing US laws. You've just built a mechanism for scanning people's devices for anything which another organization, either your law enforcement in Iran or wherever, whatever, considers to be a bad thing by their rules. So where are you going to draw the line? Are you going to say, okay, that's child abuse material, get rid of it? All right. How about a video from the Christchurch massacre? Well, in Australia, we have laws to deal with that. Out. What about a video of the police violently beating up a protester? Cops don't want you to see that. But that's a thing that we might want to distribute. That one has a question mark over it. All right, something to do with evidence of you being a Muslim, a copy of the Quran. Chinese government might say, you're a person from Xinjiang and you have a copy of the Quran, we'll send the van around.
I was going to say, a man standing in front of a tank in a certain square would seem to be the obvious image for the Chinese government to also jump on. But you're right. There's the concern here is around the use of that technology in further ways, but also the way that iCloud works. And I mean, observationally, having reviewed just about everything Apple has put out for the past 20 years, iCloud is a curious...
You poor man.
Yes, I know. iCloud is a curious and slightly buggy beast, and I don't use it. I don't use it because of their pricing structure and because it was a buggy mess when they launched it. But updates to Apple software, especially iOS updates, have this curious quirk, at least in my experience, where they'll switch iCloud back on. And as soon as they switch iCloud back on, well, suddenly all of my photos are iCloud photos, because the other weird quirk with this is Apple has outright said, if you don't have iCloud photos enabled on your device, we're not going to scan anything. You'll download these hashes to your device, but nothing will happen, which seems like a bit of an own goal in terms of the actual goal it's meant to achieve.
Yeah, I know. And yet if they don't do it that way, they are literally intercepting everyone's communication without permission and without probable cause or whatever other legal phraseology you want to put around it. It is, you're getting up in my phone, people. And this is where it all gets very curly. Now, Apple has said that they would never, extend this beyond child sexual abuse material. Well, they said at one point that what happens on your phone stays on your phone, and put billboards up all over America to say so. And now that's not true. A promise is only as good, it's only as a promise only lasts as long as someone agrees it's still the promise. And in the world of tech, as we know, we'll just throw another 10,000 word document in your face and won't let you use your own phone until you agree to all of it.
Yeah.
Um,
And you hit that issue as well. And I mean, I don't want to pick on China, but I know it's an interesting jurisdiction for Apple. It's very, very big business for them. But there, iCloud exists as a thing, but it's run on Chinese government servers by law. So it doesn't take
Yeah,
too much of
and,
a
and
jump
other
to
countries have a similar thing. Vietnam has a similar law now. For example, Thailand is as following, and Thailand's a friendly place, but it's still a military dictatorship currently, and it still has a whole lot of laws about not freedom of the press that we here would disagree with. So it does get quite curly.
Part of Apple's argument as well has been that iCloud as it stands, iCloud itself, is not encrypted. And I have seen some discussion that this might be a bit of a precursor to them saying, well, yes, we'll now encrypt it so that you're even more private. But does that really matter if they've got this effective kind of backdoor?
Exactly that. People talk about end-to-end encryption. That's the perfect thing. And I said, well, it still has to be decrypted on your device for you to read the message or see the photo. At some point, it has to be not encrypted. And all you do is intercept there. So that's why so much of the debate about, you can't crack encryption, blah, blah, blah. So, well, you don't have to. You just go to where it is. It's where you type it in and it's where you read it at the other end. And that's where you do it. And, obviously that's where you go and do it. So, again, some people have said, we're having to rely on Apple to stick to the terms of its promise not to scan our phones for anything else. And I go, guys, they wrote the operating system. You already have to trust them to only do what they say they're doing.
So, in the kind of privacy stakes, and to kind of wrap this up, I started out pointing out that Apple kind of trades very heavily on its privacy thing. You mentioned the whole, what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone billboards. Do you think after this, it's better to trust an Apple that says it has privacy principles, but maybe fudges around the corners of them, or a Google that outright says, "Oh, look, we don't have privacy principles. We make as much as we can out of your information, but at least they're upfront about it."
I don't know that you can pick. I mean, I think it comes to it really doesn't matter. The other person who writes the operating system, whoever they are, who builds the hardware, makes the chips, they're the people who have total control over what happens. You have to trust them anyway. Does it even matter what they say in public?
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Stilgherrian.
My pleasure, Alex, anytime.
So, Jen, is the Galaxy Note dead? Long live the Fold?
Quite possibly. I mean, the fire didn't actually kill it, which I think we were all a bit surprised by. The ones that were stopping planes before, planes were stopped.
When planes were still
exactly,
a thing.
When planes were still a thing, the Note was still a thing. But now, apparently, we might be actually moving on to the future of folding stuff.
So this is the Fold 3, plus we saw a Flip 3 and a few other bits and pieces, but sticking with the Fold 3 first, is it third time a charm? Have they got to the point where they can justifiably say you don't need the Galaxy Note anymore?
I think so. With every fold, it has been a better fold. So in origami terms, this is beast mode folding, because there's been problems with every one as you go along, as there is with every sort of brand new technology. So with the first one, there was a slight issue where everybody ruined the screens when they just took off what looked like plastic wrap.
Minor issue. Minor problem.
I mean, very hilarious for those of us who didn't spend money on it. And then with the second one, I mean, I've been using the second one for a period of time. However, it's a bit delicate and you can't get it wet and you can't drop it. I know another tech journo who dropped it, and apparently
you can't feed it after midnight.
No, can't feed it after midnight, definitely not. But I know another tech journo who dropped it, and I feel the pain from here. So this one, you could potentially drop it, or if you happen to do that, maybe it would survive. So it's become a bit more rugged. The front screen issues from the first one are now kind of distant memories. They've even taken away the punch hole that you see, on the inside, although there's a bit of a trade-off for that. So multiple things have gotten better in this one, and they're even promising that the screen inside is a bit more rugged and sort of resistant to scratches this time. However, I've still yet to see one, so let's test it.
So just to recap for people playing at home, this is a fold that opens like a book, and there's also the flip that opens upwards like a Star Trek communicator. So very similar, like what they do, but the design and the hinge and how you use them is different.
I think they're really different audiences too. So the fold is really for people, for absolute geeks like myself who really want to be
Me
Penny
too.
from Inspector Gadget. Oh, okay, Alex too. Okay, you want to be a Penny. We can all
Also
be
wants to
Penny.
be
It's
Penny,
fine.
yeah.
I just
That
need a dog.
hairstyle would look great on me.
I would pay to see that. But it's really kind of, high end. I want a tablet in my pocket, and I want to be able to apparently use it with an S Pen this year for the first time, which is very exciting. I want to be able to multitask and do all of the things. Whereas the Flip is really high end lifestyle device. And it's come from a very disappointing start, I would say, because when we first saw the Flip come out, it was basically old Samsung technology that had been given a new life with a funky flexible screen. Now they've made the outside display much more usable. They've increased the power of the cameras. They've put a heap of money into various ways to carry it about and make it look funky. And it could be a really nice phone for people. I mean, especially at the price this year, because the prices have got better, which I think was holding a lot of people back as well.
Yeah, the price is a big thing for both of them because I used to kind of advise people with and I'm like you, Jen. I'm much more in the fold camp than the flip camp. But I used to kind of say, look, if you're going to go that $2,000 plus price for the flip, you may as well go all in, go for broke, and get the fold, get the best of everything, as opposed to getting the compromise with the flip. But now the flip is down in it's still like flagship pricing. It's still starting at I think $14.99. That's still not a cheap phone.
Yeah.
But that's in your regular flagship kind of pricing, plus you get that folding motion. I can see them selling a few. But you mentioned the S Pen. It's not just one S Pen, there's two of the things.
Well, there's a Pro S Pen and a regular S Pen. However, I would point out that neither of these fit into your device, nor should you try to shove them inside the hinge or something. Like you have to buy a special, apparently, case that to kind of carry it alongside it and stuff. Although it does work with other devices, which is nice.
Well, to be specific, the Pro works, if I understand it correctly, the Pro
Yes.
works in other devices. The Fold Edition one, which is slightly cheaper, and neither is included, which I don't love, but Samsung said a Samsung. Chargers aren't included either, but I suppose that's just the new normal. The Pro one will work with other S Pen compatible devices, old Notes and the S21 Ultra 5G and devices like that. The Fold one, which is smaller, it's like those little election pencils, I think, like in terms of length, it's tiny. That's Fold only, and we don't know. Maybe it'll be Fold 3 only because they might not make another one. I don't. It's a weird strategy.
I mean, I think Samsung has responded to feedback on this one, and feedback as well as the pen stuff, just around sort of the durability of the device. But I think that they're kind of testing it as well. They want to know exactly how many people are going to bust out an S Pen and use it with this device because it's not guaranteed. And I think a lot of the feedback they got was probably around the size of the old Fold as well, because it is kind of a chunky device. They've managed to cut off a little bit of size. And a little bit of weight as well. And so potentially they didn't want to add that bulk in by making sure that the S Pen was fitted inside there this time. But I'll be really fascinated to see how many people start using an S Pen with this device, because it makes a lot of sense when you've got a screen that big. Like I use it for reading all the time, but it would be great to be able to scroll on there as well and sign documents and send them off and be away with all of the larger devices that can't fit inside my pocket.
So am I right in thinking that in terms of screen design and stuff, the biggest change is actually the little screen on the front of the flip when it's closed? Now a lot bigger and can do a lot more?
A lot bigger, can do a lot more, and I understand the cameras are a lot better this time around as well. And of course, as with every device, you get a bit more power in there. It comes in more colors. It comes with a greater range of various carriage devices that will look good on Instagram when you're fancy like the rest of us.
Yeah, the cameras thing is interesting because there's still that little bit of a trade-off there, I think. The cameras that you
There
get are
is, and there's
better.
also a trade-off with the fold too.
Yeah, but it feels different to me. And I say that having tested out the Flip a little bit, having tested out its camera. Samsung does pretty good cameras now, but so far with the Flip, I've not seen anything I couldn't get out of like the S20 FE, maybe even some of those higher A series models. This is a lot more expensive, and for this kind of money, you're pushing up towards what the S21s can do. And you're not getting that because you're only getting the dual camera in external thing on the Flip. But on the Fold, you are getting the interesting technology. And I think this is one of those things that's probably more geeky than useful of an in-display camera so that when the Fold opens like a book, where the previous models, that first one had a huge bar of cameras, if I remember correctly. The second one has hole punch things on the inside. This has nothing. You get a full screen effect because it's sitting underneath that. And I'm genuinely surprised Samsung were the first one to bring this to market because for ages the likes of Oppo and so on have been talking up, oh yeah, we're developing this. And Samsung just came out and said, oh yeah, this is in the Fold.
Yeah, it was kind of almost undersold. Like they've gotten rid of the punch hole. They should have told Apple about this for this whole notch business. Like I'll be interested to see if it pops up in an iPhone 13. I would say though that with that device, it looks like by putting it under the screen, they've actually lowered the resolution as well though. So it's a 4 megapixel camera rather than a 10 megapixel camera for inside. So I don't know how that will play with kind of a very selfie styled phone. But also, I would point out that as well as the Flip and the cameras kind of being a little bit more on the low end side, in the Fold as well, there hasn't been a lot of change in terms of, I mean, certainly the notch on the outside, the kind of the camera nub that you have on the outside is a lot smaller this time, but they're all still 12 megapixels.
Mm.
And so you're not getting the multi-juiced, ridiculous 48 megapixel, 100 megapixel monster. And with all of the powerful zoom that you get on the S21 series. And so even though you're buying a high-end phone for $2,500, you're not getting the top in terms of the camera range.
So you're better off getting two S21s and some gaff tape.
I want to see it. Maybe if you can come up with an excellent case too, maybe you can solve a problem.
It wasn't just phones that they announced, though, Jen. And, well, ever since the day, a long, long time ago now, where I walked around an infamous Shanghai technology market with you, and you were offered a watch, I think it was about every 15 seconds. I've been well aware that you're a woman who appreciates a watch. Do you appreciate what Samsung's done with the Galaxy watches?
I'm glad that you worked this into the conversation again,
I had
Alex.
to,
Yes,
I had to.
I'd like a watch. I mean, so they've got two watches, and I kind of know which one that you want this time because there's one with a bezel and there's one without a bezel, and one is kind of like it's a fidget spinner essentially around the top that
Yeah.
will stop you from doing anything else, but can also kind of access different stuff. I'm a bit scared of some of these watches because they've got a lot of health sensors in them, and they've got health sensors that can tell you exactly how fat you are and how much bone density you have and potentially how much water you happen to be holding at the time and those sorts of things and really stuff that you don't want to be sharing with anybody else. So it's holding a lot of power in your life potentially. However, at the same time, I'm kind of disappointed because I don't know in Australia how much of that stuff we'll be getting. So it even had a blood pressure monitor on it. And Samsung in their event last night said, we're rolling blood pressure out to more countries. And between Austria and Azerbaijan, I did not see Australia in that list. So unless we were Commonwealth of Australia, I don't think that we made the cut this time.
I need to call BS on a couple of these things. How can a watch be a proper blood pressure monitor unless the band of the watch goes and expands like a blood pressure glove and then and then takes your blood pressure and bone density? Like I've had a bone density scan. You lie in a machine and it goes back and forth. How's the watch do that? Is it scanning through my wrist?
I can answer some of this. Not entirely, and obviously I can't speak to Samsung's
Dr. Alex
implementation, and for liability reasons, Dr. Alex got his degree at the same place that Dr. Lionel Hutt's got his law degree from. But or Dr. Nick, I should say. Anyway, I can answer this because there are other devices that do this kind of thing. Withings have a scale that will do things like bone density and so on, and they do it via electrical sensors. They do it via, I think it's electrical impedance is the term.
In your skin.
Yeah, through your skin. It's almost certain. They're very, very careful to say they are not medical grade. So what you're talking about, Adam, is medical grade and would give you a far more precise result. This will give you an indicative kind of result. What I find interesting with that sensor stuff, and I agree with you, yeah, some of it is a bit personal, but what I find interesting is Samsung says they've built this all into one sensor. This isn't a watch that's got like 15 different little glowy bits on the bottom that do different things. This is one sensor that's just going zap, right, now I know everything.
Yeah, that's not scary at all.
One sensor to rule them all. No, I haven't heard that anywhere before, and it hasn't been ominous. No. However, I would say what I am excited to see in the watches, though, is the change of software, essentially. So your Samsung Tizen is supposed to be working more with Google this time, and I would love to see some refreshed menus because some of those old Samsung menus have been around since the giant chunky days when there was a camera on my watch and I was trying to take photos with it because I figured nobody else would. So I'm very excited to see kind of a refreshed lineup in terms of the software features this year.
And more apps. I mean, that's
more
the big.
apps.
I think that's the big exciting thing with it being. I believe technically it's Wear OS with kind of Tizen tweaky bits in it. I think if I read
yes, I believe it's supposed to be a marriage of the two, but they mentioned a lot of stuff about sort of taking the stuff the apps on your phone and the ones that were compatible, bringing them across to the watch automatically, and having more storage to cope with that as well, which could be really interesting.
And finally, and look, I'll be honest, probably the least wow bang part of the Unpacked event, but I'm sure there are people at Samsung who care. Bless their little cotton socks. They had new buds. And look, I'm on the record as saying Samsung's done reasonable buds, but they've not been my favourite. Jen, should I be excited about the buds too?
Oh, look, if you get them as a free gift with purchase, you could certainly charge them and use them. They look like the other buds, to be honest. However, I'm disappointed that we're not seeing more earbeans because I love the earbeans. I thought they were fantastic and something different. These look like buds we've seen before, but maybe they're amazing and I'm just underselling them. They do come in different colours.
The earbeans were really uncomfortable, though.
I quite like the earbuds. I found them comfortable, although I would wear them to the front door and the couriers would be like, oh, she got a hearing aid. I need to talk up. So, yeah.
I've got a parcel for you.
Okay, thanks, dude. Yeah, so maybe they'll stop those awkward moments because people will understand what they are now.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Jen for joining us for this week's show.
Pleasure.
And Jen, you've been on the show a whole bunch of times. You know what's just about to come, the classic Vertical Hold 3 Questions of Doom. Where can people find your work online? Where can they find your social media online? And the new big contentious question, what takeaway food should be the tech journalist's go-to option when deadlines are pressing?
Yeah, this is very tricky. So you can find my work across News Corp mastheads like the Courier Mail and the Herald Sun and the Daily Telegraph and all those sorts of places. I am pretty much on Twitter all the time at Jen Dudley. And as for takeaway foods, I've got to say, you've got to have some sort of caffeine in there, but I would say chips because, computer chips require actual chips.
Are we talking crisps or hot chips?
Hot chips.
Right.
Hot chips.
Naturally,
because it's kind of the meal
How can you even ask?
the meal for all seasons.
I think clarity is important, but no, it's an excellent choice. Thanks also, obviously, to Stilgherrian and Steve Molk for making time for the show. And as always, you can catch us online on Twitter at VerticalHoldAU, on the Vertical Hold Facebook page, or on the web at verticalhold.com.au.
And as always, thanks everyone for listening. Hang in there. Don't forget to tell your friends about us and leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice to help us spread the good word. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.